2 raging book nerds, 14 years of friendship, and 1 burning question.
If Katniss Everdeen posted on Reddit, would she be the arsehole?
Welcome to Once Upon a Red Flag. This season, we're stepping into Panem, where every tribute, tyrant, and mentor gets their day in the Am I the Asshole courtroom.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Rachel.
And join us while we read between the red flags and break down the Hunger Games, one questionable decision at a time. Hi everyone, and welcome back to episode 5 of Once Upon a Red Flag. We are so happy you have survived this long with us. I don't think I'd survive this long in the arena, but we're super proud. And yeah, this has probably been a couple of months now, right?
What?
When this comes out?
When this comes out? Yeah, so this is episode 5, so I'm thinking this is going to be what, like January?
Yeah, so welcome to 2026.
For context, for us, this is the 8th of November. We are well prepared. We are well scheduled.
We are.
That is the issue with having full-time jobs and multiple different projects that we work on. It needs to be scheduled far in advance. So if in the coming episodes you see me wearing like Christmas stuff and Christmas decorations in the middle of March, now you know why.
But okay, so our icebreaker question for this episode, Rachel. And this is a spicy one. This could get really spicy. Okay, what's the worst advice you've ever been given?
It's very on topic as well for Haymitch being the mentor. The worst advice I've ever been given.
I really had to think about this one.
Out of everything that I've heard I've been given some like real dodgy advice.
Oh God, right. You'll have to tell me that later. I need all the details.
It's a real dodgy advice. You probably ought to know it, to be honest.
It wasn't me that gave you the dodgy advice.
It wasn't you that gave me the dodgy advice.
Okay, cool. Okay.
But we've had 14 years of friendship, so you've heard it firsthand from me when it happened.
Okay.
But the worst piece of advice I've ever got was kind of a piece of like advice, but also like mansplaining, slightly love bombing advice.
Oh no. Okay.
This came from a guy that I was speaking to for about 3 weeks, and he basically told me that I should just trust everyone until they gave me a reason. Doesn't matter how long I know you, I'm just going to trust you implicitly until you give me a reason not to.
Is that the whole like they're innocent till proven guilty kind of argument? It
was, I mean, fair for that one, but it was said in the context of like I think I made a joke. I made like a brief little joke. You know, when someone's like an innocent, like, I'm going to lick your pizza so you can't have it kind of thing. Yeah. I think I said something like, oh, I don't trust you enough for that. And I've been talking to this guy for like 3 weeks. And he's like, why don't you trust me?
Because you've known each other for 3 weeks.
Because I've known you for 3 weeks. We've not even met yet. We're literally just talking from dating apps. And he's like, well, you should just trust me implicitly because I've never done anything to hurt you. Have that. And I'm like, red flag.
But they've also not given you any reason to think they won't at that point.
But also like that itself was a red flag reaction to be like, why don't you trust me? I made a joke, dude.
Yikes.
I made a very innocent joke, and now you're telling me, and it was basically phrased as advice. It was advice to be like, you should just trust everyone. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, no one's given you a reason not to trust someone, and therefore you should probably trust them until they give you a reason not to. And I'm like,
ironically, though, those kind of people who say that typically don't really trust anybody.
Yeah, that's the
That's the problem.
Okay. That was the problem. Okay. And he wouldn't believe that was a joke. He would not like go like, even with context.
He didn't trust that you were joking. That's ironic.
Didn't trust that I was joking. I mean, like, it was advice that he gave me, but it was mansplaining advice.
Right.
Said him.
Okay. I think
I didn't go on a date with him. Don't worry.
The worst advice I've ever been given. To be fair, I haven't had like a whole lot of advice, and I'm quite lucky that most people I actually get advice from is usually pretty sound. I'm the kind of person who is like, oh, I wouldn't really take advice from someone who's not in a position that I would happily swap with. If that makes sense. Kind of thing.
Makes sense, yeah.
But I think the worst thing I've been told is like, don't make waves. If you've heard that before, it's like, oh, don't kick up a fuss, or don't stir the pot, or don't say that because you're just going to annoy somebody. And it's like, okay, well, that works for a while, but when there's a problem and I can't like, you know, don't make waves, it's like, well, then I'm not going to get what I need. You know what I mean? I think that was
like
pretty awful advice.
It's put up and shut up, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah,
this is the hand you've been dealt. This is how this system works. Don't try and make it better. Don't try and make it different. Just go with the flow. You're like, well, actually, this is not how we make progress.
Yeah, and actually, I think that Don't Make Waves is actually pretty fitting for the Hunger Games and Pan Am as well. So I think that all kind of ties in.
That was very, like, on point advice there.
Yeah,
very bad advice. But...
Yeah, I had actually done that on purpose. Very proud of myself. Anyway, for this week's episode, Rachel, would you like to read our post?
Yes. Speaking of advice, we are dealing with Haymitch and all of his dodgy advice, or good advice, as the case may turn out to be. So, yeah. Haymitch is asking, am I the asshole for being the worst mentor ever? I won a certain televised deathmatch decades ago. The only person alive from my district who has won. Since then, every year I've been forced to mentor 2 new kids sent to the same show that I survived. I'm supposed to teach them how to stay alive, win sponsors, and play the game. The thing is, they never do. Every year I watch 2 kids from the place I grew up get slaughtered on live TV. These are kids I see around the district. I still live there, and every year I'm expected to show up sober, cheerful, and be an inspiration and a mentor to these kids. So I drink a lot. I say things I shouldn't. I push people away. I honestly think I'm entitled to. I've survived the worst trauma of my life the year I went into the arena, and now I need to help kids through that trauma as well. The concept is disgusting, but I'm stuck, and I cope in the best way I know how. This year, though, the kids I'm mentoring actually have a chance. They are smart and strong and decent, but I know what's coming to them in the arena, so that makes it worse. At first, I wasn't much help. I was drunk in our first interactions, barely paying attention. But I sobered up a little quite early on and realised I have to at least try with these kids. So I gave them a strategy advice, taught them what to say, what strings to pull to get them sponsors inside the arena, so they might have a chance to get gifts of food and supplies to give them an advantage. Mm-hmm. I don't think they hold it against me that I was drunk at first and still used alcohol as a crutch throughout the whole process, albeit less than usual. But I still have a reputation for being a drunken disgrace to District 12. And maybe they're right. I wonder if any other kids could have survived in the years previous if I had tried to help. So, am I the asshole?
Okay, I think it's so hard to comment on this without obviously getting into Haymitch's backstory from Sunrise on the Reaping, and we will, just not yet, as we'll be getting deep into that book later in the season, don't you worry. And I will probably cry, not gonna lie, when we do, so that's a pre-warning. But we know from
kind of broke me.
It really broke me. We know from the very start, right, that Haymitch is seen as a joke in District 12, not just to the capital and people of the games, but he's seen even on screen when you've got like the 2 hosts who are kind of like hosting the Hunger Games Reaping, that they literally joke about Haymitch. But his own people as well joking about him feels really harsh at District 12. But they, you see them as hopefully a drunkard, and they see him as a drunkard who doesn't help his own tributes, essentially, right? That's the bottom line. And even Katniss remarks that if he had been sober, people in the capital would actually like him, and maybe they'd actually want to sponsor the tributes, right? And so there is kind of that argument that if he just cleaned up his act, some of their past tributes who were actually tall and were actually muscular enough to win, and had like a fighting chance, but Haymitch let them down because they couldn't actually get sponsors. And that's so hard to actually think about. And being a tribute in District 12 is the same thing as being a corpse, because that drunk man is meant to be your guidance and support.
Yeah, well, one of the first remarks that the mentors, is made about mentors from Katniss, is that they can be the difference between your life and your death. And how invested do we believe Haymitch is in the life and death of his tributes? Is he invested too much? Is that the problem? But going back to even if you wanted to be a sponsor, even if you disregard Haymitch, disregard any of the PR stuff, and you go, that guy is more muscly, from District 12 than even the careers are. You've got to converse with Haymitch to sponsor someone. He's the one who controls gifts. If he is completely blackout drunk, even if someone did want to sponsor a District 12 tribute, then you're screwed. There is no way around that, unfortunately, then.
Like the man who controls the buttons to give you your sponsor gives, and also the man who's meant to take in the money and get that like sorted for the sponsor gives is like blackout drunk the entire time. Yeah, obviously that's not going to go very well, is it? And like going back to him being drunk all the time and being this joke, it's not exactly a poster child for wanting to win the games, really, is it? Like, I think it also shows that even if you do win, you could end up like Haymitch. And in a sense, would death just be a better relief? Like, it just shows the cycle of trauma that happens with these games.
Yeah, I mean, that's drunken Haymitch's like advice is stay alive. That's literally what that's the words. Here's some advice: stay alive. And then he bursts out laughing. I mean, arguably that is probably the most important piece of advice. That is kind of what you need to do to win the games. It's the most obvious piece of advice. It's freaking useless.
Yeah, it's useless advice.
You can kind of see why you burst out laughing, because you're screwed when you win as well. Even if you win, it never actually ends. Like, you're in a deeply scarring experience, and then you have to relive that trauma from just a slightly different angle every single year when you become a mentor.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that genuinely? And drunk is probably the best thing he could possibly do to himself as a response to that, because there are a lot deeper and more harmful things he could do to cope with that trauma than being drunk.
Yeah, and I think for Haymitch himself, like going through winning those games, come back to District 12, to then just become the laughing stock of the district. But at the same time, it's also essentially a death sentence. The kids or the parents of the district would end up seeing Haymitch as like death walking himself. Like, I can't imagine you would make many friends, because if you had friends who then had kids, would they want the kids around Haymitch, who is now like this figure of death, because all these kids that go to the Hunger Games just die. He doesn't really help them. He's not a particularly good mentor. It's synonymous. Bleh, my God, dyslexic. The tribute means corpse. So does that mean that Haymitch himself is the Reaper? Is that how all these adults would see him?
I guess even if you take away the drunkenness from this equation, being a mentor itself and having friends who have kids, like even without like Haymitch being a mentor who's never had a tribute under his care survive, like up to this point, even if you take away the drunkenness and you take away like his failure rate, I suppose, can you imagine like being a mentor and then you're like your best friend's kid gets reaped?
Yeah. But that's, well, you like, there's a whole conversation around that in Sunrise on the Reaping, and like who Haymitch was friends with when he was younger, and all that kind of thing. We're going to leave that for a little bit, because that kind of could have actually happened. But yeah, like you have to think, like all the friends he had grew up, they probably did get married, they probably did have families. He's not going to be friends with any of them anymore for various reasons. But also, how do you make new friends when you're seen like this? Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
How do you make new friends as a drunk, but how do you make friends as a mentor or someone who has to live in that trauma? Because most people in the district would avoid anything Hunger Games until they are literally forced to. And what is Haymitch apart from effectively a pawn in the Hunger Games? It's like seeing him, if you fear the Hunger Games, regardless of drunken state or whatever, must be like, even if it has like victors would have some sort of celebrity status within the districts and the victors, because they are the ones who won and they might be able to teach you something if you get reaped. But you're still like looking death in the face. You're still looking at your deepest horror as a kid, because your deepest horror would be getting reaped.
Yeah, I think he probably didn't have that problem the first couple of years that he got back, but I think after 40 whatever years, or whatever it is, it's not actually that as long as that, I don't think. But after
He's
having such a
24.
long, 24, my like concept of time is terrible. But having kid after kid after kid after kid after kid die in his care, after a while, that's going to start to take its toll. And we see Haymitch is, at least at the start, a straight up alcoholic. Like that's what he is. I mean, Peter himself has to wash Haymitch up and essentially put him to bed like he is a child, after Peter himself has literally just found out he's been raped and is probably going to be put to the death. Haymitch is meant to help Peter, not the other way around.
Correct me on the chronology of this as well. But don't forget that Haymitch punches Peter.
Yeah,
I think
he
this
does.
is like just before he cleans him up. Am I right
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, Peter cleans him up after like Haymitch has decked him. And but like even Haymitch says it's fine because the bruise will give him an advantage with response to other attributes. Show him that he's tough, willing to fight. And I'm like, that's not very good advice, dude. And then my personal favourite Haymitch quote is when he says to Katniss that she has as much charm as a dead slug. That is
I forgot about that.
my personal favourite. I love it. But I guess the biggest thing that makes me question Haymitch isn't the fact that he decks Peter. I mean, that is questionable. Like, you're meant to help this kid and you punch him instead. And then dead slug comment, really. But the biggest mark against Haymitch, in my opinion, is the fact that he doesn't send Peter anything until he is teamed up with Katniss.
Yeah, in the arena.
And Peter comments that he always knew that Katniss was Haymitch's favourite. Like, imagine how rough that is to be like, yes, like our mentor that we share has been sending you things. You've got medicine and bread, and I've been led here dying.
Oh my God.
And I've got nothing. And then Katniss has a direct quote where she says, he hasn't made much of an effort to connect with Peter, really. No shit, girl. No shit. But then she goes on to be like, perhaps he thinks a bowl of broth would just be a bowl of broth to Peter, whereas I'll see the strings attached to it. And so, like, Katniss and Haymitch are alike in the way they know how each other thinks. And part of me, like, with that one, I wonder whether it's Katniss and Haymitch or whether Haymitch just knows how the tributes both of them are thinking. Because I wonder, arguably, if Haymitch is a good mentor, he's strategic and all this stuff, I wonder if he knows exactly what he's doing with Peter. Because all Peter really needs is Katniss, and he'll die a happy man. Like, I think this is where the decision to use Haymitch nudging the game makers in the film comes from. Because I think that's literally like what Peter needs, is that, and even then, like, doing the fake dating stuff that we talked about last episode, how Haymitch was a part of that. Is that then giving Peter what he wants? Does Peter just want that hope that he can be with the girl that he likes, and so he plants that seed into Katniss, and Katniss plays along because at least if Peter dies, he'll be happy.
That's so sad.
Like, does he think that far ahead? I'd like to think so.
It's not until we get further on, kind of those areas, and he is often drunk. Not always drunk the further along you get, but he is often drunk. And yes, he is drunk, but Haymitch is also deeply strategic. We obviously know this from Sunrise on the Reaping, but we don't have all that background yet. And this is the only thing that really starts to help Katniss and Peter, is that Haymitch is, at his core, quite a strategic rascal, I think was what they kind of end up calling him, isn't it? And his first parts of advice are obvious, as I said, and not helpful, like stay alive. And that first breakfast is honestly patronizing. And at those moments, I honestly get so angry at Haymitch for not properly helping them from the start, that it didn't come in until later. One
of the things that I see, though, is, and even Katniss reflects on this, because quite early on, that first breakfast is patronizing, but he does quickly, like, step up from there. Like, once Peter's, like, cleaned him up and they do the whole, like, well, what can you do? What are your skills? Like, Katniss comments that Haymitch and Effie, like, are of one mind, determined to whip them into shape, full of direction about what they should do, what they shouldn't do, how to behave. No one calls Effie incompetent. She's tone deaf. Sure.
Yeah, she's tone deaf.
She is fully competent at what she does. So even like for Katniss to reflect on Haymitch as being on par with Effie, even in these moments, like, is to go from being a drunkard and Katniss really sort of judging him quite harshly at the reaping before she's reaped, to then be like, okay, like putting him on a level with Effie is quite a decent compliment from the girl. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's got problems.
Yes,
and he could have been like, he could have been there quicker. But
and I know, obviously, like I said, it's not until he sees Katniss has some rage within her. Like, that's when he starts to become more of a functioning alcoholic and starts to train and starts to coach him. I think he says something, or at least it might not be in the book, but I know in the film he says, "Oh, have I got a pair of fighters this year?" Like, he's like, "Oh, these people actually have some fight in them." But it seems to change things for him.
It does, even if he doesn't actually say it in the books. I think that's kind of the underlying theme that he runs with, right? It's the they can do this. They can actually like have some impact, but then it's a case of, well, can these guys have impact, or could other tributes have had impact?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It does make me wonder if he ever did this, became more of a functioning alcoholic for any of his other past tributes, or was it just Katniss and Peter, like the idea of not pinning these two against each other, but rather teaming them up, which might not be something they've really tried before, that made the difference for him this time. And that's something I really want to talk about, the fact that Haymitch and Cinna make them walk in pairs, hold hands, seem like a team rather than against each other, like the rest of the mentors do with their districts. Like, when they are going in on their chariots for kind of that first parade, and Cinna, which I'm assuming has obviously been formulated with Haymitch, like gives them a nod to hold hands and to hold their hands and to be together and to not look against each other. And how Haymitch asked them to stay together in training, like to not go off and to be kind of like walking in pairs. That is kind of like a silent rebellion here. Like, this is different. Like, this is important. His instruction here is a rebellion in itself, and he must have been overjoyed when he concocted the Peter in love with Katniss plan. Because I guess if I was Haymitch, would you be stupid not to run with that strategy? If that's the best one that's crossed your path the entire time that you've been a mentor in 25 years?
I guess that's the question, is like, how many failed strategies were there? Like, we're treating this, I guess, and we're expected to treat this as if this is the first time ever that Haymitch has tried. This is the first time ever that he's picked himself up and attempted something. But then I guess, well, are we being too harsh with him there? Like, should we give him the benefit of the doubt? Like, do you think Effie would have let him do that every single year over and over again and screw over her chances as well? Like, what do we know about Effie? And that's because Effie wants to be promoted to a better district. Do we think she would let Haymitch purposely, or like, I guess, neglectfully screw her over like that? Or do you think he has tried?
I think, especially after his first games, he probably did properly try for a while. Because obviously, I don't think he became an alcoholic straight away. I think probably after your 10 games, he was probably at his tavern. That's probably when he started drinking, and that's really when they all kind of started giving up hope a bit. But we do see, like, he does become a bit more functional. Haymitch does actually coach Peter and Katniss on the interview. The feedback is actually kind of helpful. But I feel what he says about the arena, for finding water, running into the trees as soon as the gong goes off, or the cannon goes off, that really stays with Katniss. Because, you know, she's on that platform. She's very aware that if she steps off that platform before the cannon goes off, that they'll just blow her to bits. They'll kill her anyway. And she's, you know, thinking in her head, she's looking at Peter and she's thinking, you know, Haymitch told us to run away from the bloodbath as quickly as possible. She obviously doesn't do that. She doesn't listen to that, but the advice still stays with her. And when she's up in like in the forest walking around and hasn't seen anybody for what feels like a couple of days, I don't think it is actually a couple of days, and she's dehydrated and she's thinking and trying to find water, like this is all advice that has kind of stayed with her. Not that she necessarily listens to any of it. I mean, I think a girl's allowed to go a bit off script when she's been put to the death.
Yeah, I think in that highly pressurized situation, you're allowed to experiment a little and figure out whether you trust someone like that or not. So he does very quickly give actually good advice. Like, it is basic stuff, I know, but I also think that he knows Katniss, or knows Katniss's mentality enough. Like, that's the concept, right? That they get each other, that they are so similar.
Yeah.
Even to the point where Katniss does, like, if we go towards like second book, she gets hit hard and she tries to drink with Haymitch. She does something Peter does. Like, they are similar. So, like, yes, it's basic stuff. Find water, get away from the bloodbath. It's useful advice, though, knowing that Katniss will be tempted.
Yes.
Knowing that she will see that bow and arrow. And he knows full well by this point how the game makers are going to play. He knows there will be one set of bow. There'll be umpteen knives and spears and everything and everything like that. But then there'll be one bow and one quiver of arrows, and she will want them, and that will tempt her right into the middle.
Yeah, because I'll make
so
her fight
obviously
for it.
he's gonna. And then you've not only got him giving that advice to Katniss, but Peter as well, knowing that Peter will sort of like try and keep Katniss away from that bow and arrows and try and find another way to get that's not going into the cornucopia. But then you have her doubting Haymitch as well. Like, the way that Katniss doubts Peter, she doubts Haymitch because he refuses to use a sponsor gift on water. And yet, this is Katniss figuring out, like, why wouldn't he give me water? Why wouldn't he keep me alive?
Yeah.
It must be close by.
Yeah.
But then she still wonders, like, is he directing the sponsors to Peter? Is he got bladdered since we came in and slipped back to his old ways, and he doesn't even know what's going on right now? But I don't think that. I don't think she says, somehow I don't believe that. I don't believe he's trying to kill me off by neglect either. He has, in fact, in his own unpleasant way, genuinely been trying to prepare me for this.
Own unpleasant way.
And clearly the right move was, like, to withhold that gift, right? He can see exactly where she is on the map and exactly how far she is to water. There's no point spending the money that gift of water is worth that would then save her in that moment, but mean that she's reliant on an external source.
Yeah.
And I guess it would also signal to sponsors that she's not as capable as he's trying to make her out to be.
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought of that. That's very, you want her to seem capable because you want people to bet on her and therefore have more reason to give her sponsors.
And then if you're the reason that she's got water, and you can almost send her one bottle of water, by the way.
Yeah.
Unless you're willing to give her water, which the price of which will go up and up and up and up. She's then reliant on sponsors to survive in there without dehydrating. Whereas if she finds her own water and her pack has got the iodine in so she can cleanse it herself and all this, then she is self-reliant and she has outlasted the dehydration to find the water. And then you've saved up the money to afford the burn medicine, to afford something she actually needs that she cannot acquire within the arena.
Yeah.
So, like, you and I think there are some people who would judge Haymitch quite harshly for, like, well, he could have given her the water and then she'd have kept going on the right path and then she'd have found the little pond to get her own next time.
But then she might expect to be sent the water. She needs to be able to, I guess
she
that's
might
what
be
you're trying to say, like, fend for herself kind of thing.
And then he wouldn't have had the money to be able to afford the burn cream, which then would have probably put her more of a disadvantage, because then she's more injured. She's injured and trying to hunt. She's injured and trying to climb up trees and run from Draka stings and trying to outlast the careers while her hands are burnt, her legs burn, everything like that. It's made a big difference. And I think one of my questions is like, how much do we think these little bits of advice as well have kept them alive? Like, because also, like I say, I think that if Katniss hadn't had Haymitch and Peter being like, do not run in to that cornucopia, she would have done it and she'd have been part of the bloodbath, and I think she would have died then. Same with the water. Like, if he'd not sent it to her in time, then I can justify that one. But then I also can't quite figure out whether that's the same reason. I think that's the same reason that Peter didn't get any help with, obviously, him, like, lead dying under, like, camouflaged, because then it's not him fending for himself who's going to sponsor Peter then on the brink of death when they could sponsor Katniss.
This is something that I always get into all the time when I think about Haymitch and how he mentored those guys. Was, I think, as Haymitch realizes Katniss, who on earth is Katniss? When I think as Haymitch realizes Katniss, and by proxy Peter, can be used for the rebellion, he does start to bond with them over time. And even Katniss with Haymitch, and even when they're in the arena and they're doing this whole, you know, one kiss, one food, like that kind of thing, they are kind of forming a sort of relationship. And I think even from quite early on, Haymitch realizes that Katniss is a lot more likely to be that person for the rebellion. And I thought, is that why Katniss is getting more of the sponsor gifts? I think Peter remarks that he didn't get anything until
he gets nothing until he's teamed up. And I think part of me does come back to this, like what did Peter have? Peter had the careers behind him for a good part until the careers turned on him after the Tracker Jacker, which is multiple days after they go in, because it takes 3 days to fully dehydrate. So it's dehydrating warmer because it's dehydrating quicker because it's hotter and it's warmer in there. But it's a couple of days before Katniss is desperate and she gets her first gift. Like, we know career strategy that we'll get into in the next episode, but like, they have all the supplies. They have everything. So in this sense, Peter's taken care of for the first little bit until he gets turned on for helping to protect Katniss. And then I guess one of my questions is like, why didn't he send Peter something before the leg got infected and kept them both in play? But ultimately, like, Katniss is the priority, not even from a rebellion perspective, but also from a tribute perspective, because you have an unfair balance of power here where you have one mentor for one district. Even if you had two mentors, like you should really have, one for the boy, one for the girl. Even if you have two, you still have an imbalance of power because you have one district that obviously have some sense of unity being from that district. And you have to pick which sponsor gets the money, right? Which I don't know whether you sponsors would directly approach individual tributes, because like, Katniss is stronger, but the whole idea is that they've started this star-crossed lovers thing, which ideally would mean that both of them would have sponsors. Both of them would have people who want to keep them alive. So was Peter just not getting anyone who directly wanted to sponsor him? Or was it, we want to sponsor District 12, and then Haymitch pushed it to Katniss?
I'm pretty sure you have to bet on a specific tribute, so either the male or the female tribute from the district. I think probably what did happen was, after Peter confessed his love for Katniss and they went in, and especially when the audience, or the viewers as you would call them, saw him team up with the careers and almost in a sense try and hunt her down, I think he would have lost a lot of sponsors from that, and anything he had kind of racked up, I think would have been minimal, because he had basically said, oh, I'm in love with Katniss. The likelihood of him returning was very slim. I think they were a lot more likely to contribute to Katniss, who had such a high score and who was like the love of Peter, and I guess like just hoping to keep her alive to make his sacrifice worth it. I feel like that's probably what would have happened, and that might be one of the reasons why Katniss got so much more sponsor gifts than Peter did.
But then Haymitch gets the blame by both Katniss and Peter, says, why has Haymitch not sent me anything? Haymitch has sent Katniss things because Katniss is his favourite. That's the kind of dynamic. That's how they're viewing it. And so that comes back to my question, like, how does it actually work? I don't think we'll actually ever know the answer with that, like who...
Well, I think
who is the one directly, because they blame him as if it's directly on him. But then is that just because they're coloured by his reputation as being a terrible mentor? Is it easier to blame it on Haymitch than on themselves not being good enough to get sponsors?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of like grey areas and probably a lot of a blurring line to them. You could understand that in the arena they're scared about getting killed, like every second that they're in there. They're probably not thinking of all the, what's the word I'm looking for? The technicalities for how this sponsorship
how it all works.
Because I'm pretty sure it is the case. And, you know, listeners, let us know if you actually have a better idea of how the betting and sponsorship system works. But I'm pretty sure it's a case of you sponsor a specific tribute and you can't, like, it's not a case of it all goes into the District 12 pot and then gets sent out.
I mean, individual tributes get the scores, I guess. They're the ones who, like, that determines your sponsorship is your score, I suppose. So it is likely to be a direct Peter gets something, Rue gets something, that kind of thing. But it's still telling that they blame Haymitch. Like, their opinions of Haymitch is still coloured by this idea that it's his fault.
But even though they do blame him, we obviously see that, there is still that bond that develops there. Because literally once the games have ended, Haymitch is the first person that Katniss essentially runs into the arms of, and he, you know, obviously says, well done, sweetheart. That's the whole thing we'll get into later on, because that pulls at my heartstrings. And it has a whole new meaning since Sunrise on the Reaping. But how far do you think Haymitch views Katniss and Peter as pawns in the bigger rebellion scheme, which would definitely have been cooking on gas by then? And do you think, and if so, when does Haymitch start to feel actually protective of them?
So I pulled, when I was looking through the books, I've gone through your notes to compile all of this, and I pulled out that exact same "well done, sweetheart" quote.
It made me cry,
and it really made me question a lot of, like, when does this start? So I have a brewing kind of rant to go on when we get into book 2, and we can really start pulling apart a lot of, like, when this rebellion plan did actually first begin. And when the first seeds of it started to being sowed, because I think it's made on the surface, it seems to be the rebellion starts when Snow gets directly involved with Katniss's life. But really, it's been going on a lot longer than this. Even during book 1, you see those little seeds already being planted. And I struggle with this because I actually quite like Haymitch.
Oh no, so do I.
I can't figure out exactly where I believe this became more about rebellion versus tributes versus kids from my district.
I think it's all
like,
a bit both.
Did he begin helping them because he realised he finally had some pawns to put on the chessboard? Like, was he already thinking rebellion, then boom, these two land in his lap, and then he goes, oh, okay. What can we do here? I have something to try now. Or does he think, okay, cool, right, these kids deserve some help. They're in the unfortunate position I was in. Let's help them as much as we can. Oh, wait. Oh, this chain of events has begun and I can exploit this chain of events.
Yeah, like, I think...
When does he realise... Because Katniss becomes more than just a victor. When does he realise Katniss can be the Mockingjay? is she his favourite because she can be moulded into the Mockingjay? You have Katniss denying that they're alike because they're always butting heads. They're alike in the way that they're also emotionally screwed up.
Oh yeah, well yeah, they're both kind of emotionally like messed up people, and they're not very good at expressing their emotions. But for me, I think for Haymitch, it really is just accumulation of everything. Like we know he got drunk because he'd spent like 25 whatever years watching the kids that he'd been trying to train die, and he'd kind of given up on it. I feel like it's a combination of he'd seen that Katniss had some fire in her. He'd seen that Peter could help bring out that fire in her in his own special way. This was different for him. This year had different things going on. It had different strategies. The fake dating, as we spoke about in the last episode, Haymitch knew could help concoct kind of that rebellion later on. He probably saw again Katniss, someone who reminded him a lot of himself, and in Sunrise and the Reaping we'll get onto this idea of her being like him but luckier, which is like a whole thing we're gonna have to talk about. And then I imagine at that point he had probably already heard from the rebellion people, from I don't know, maybe even District 13 and President Coin herself, if he knew at that point, about potentially using what was starting to brew as for the rebellion. Because we know they even tried to do it with Haymitch when he was in his games, that they're constantly looking for someone to take on that role of like the rebellion icon, and in this case the Mockingjay because of her pin. I think it was a bit of everything. I like to think at some point Haymitch did actually start to feel protective for them. I would hate to think that he didn't, obviously with his background with Lulu and everyone from his games. I would like to think there was care in there somewhere.
Yeah,
in the mix.
This is my thing as well, because obviously we've just spent the entirety of the last episode talking about, Katniss is emotionally screwed up, but here's all the ways that she's actually quite a feeling person, and this is why she has all these problems. Haymitch is emotionally screwed in the same way. And I really, really, really want to believe that he also is very protective of these kids. That's not just about them having potential benefits for this rebellion that he thinks he might be owed, I guess, as revenge for what happened to him. And that question, I think he really is. If I'm ignoring Sunrise and the Reaping, the question marks there. If I'm including Sunrise on the Reaping, I think he's a really genuinely nice but traumatized guy who is just doing his best.
Yeah, his best.
Just doing his best in a very bad situation, but I kind of would like to know when the rebellion took over, which I guess we're going to discuss more in the next book when we get round to... I think it's actually the beginning of Mockingjay for how we've planned it. But it'll be interesting to really see if we can pinpoint where that care started. He has a duty of care as a mentor, sure, but where the actual emotional feeling for these kids, and actually keeping them alive began versus when them being pawns in a greater scheme began. And that's a sticking point for me. I need to know. So it'd be interesting to pinpoint that later on.
So I guess as we're kind of talking about these things, and we have talked about it a bit, but now would be a good time to talk about how and why at this point we think Haymitch got this bad. Yes, he won apparently from outsmarting the rest of his fellow tributes. But for that boy to change into this man, we knew even then, pre-Sunrise on the Reaping, that he must have been in this hellish repeat of trauma. How many tributes has he both mentored and had to watch die horrible deaths since his games? What would the actual figure be?
So with him being the only mentor choice, that means that unlike other districts, I guess, where you have multiple different victors to pull from to be the mentor, because there's one mentor for the boy and one mentor for the girl, right? So I guess that just cycles in and out of newest victor or whatever, or however that works. I don't quite know, but he's the only option. So that means he has mentored both the boy and the girl.
Yeah.
And this is the 74th games, and he won the 50th. So that's 23 games before this.
times 2.
And he's mentored both. So that's
So
46 kids.
He's got to know and then had 46 kids die on him.
Pretty much, yeah. And I was like, say he has the disadvantage of having mentored both kids each year. So how hard is that then? Because I guess if you have a boy mentor and a girl mentor, and you are only responsible for that one child, you know that they are your sole focus.
Yeah.
Whereas here, Haymitch has to split his focus he has Effie to help, but she's there for a slightly different role. She's like the PR.
Yeah.
Like,
he's kind of laboured with the responsibility to mentor twice the amount of people that
with the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So it's not like, so say you've got a week, 2 weeks, 2 weeks between the reaping and you go into the arena. You've got that 1 week with one mentee, I guess, if you are in any other district. Whereas here you have that 1 week with 2. And so lumping them together into that like same category of mentoring together does mean that they get more time with their mentor, but they also are aware that only one of them can survive. And so he's having to split a focus, really. How do you not try and figure out which of your 2 tributes that you're having to mentor is the most likely to survive to give them your attention? He has to be like judge, jury, and executioner before they even go into the arena to figure out which kid to mentor best.
That's
how hard is that?
Having to make him choose on top of all of that to try, basically, essentially choose his best bet at keeping them alive. Because I guess it gets down to the point, it's like, well, either do I just try and mentor both and lose both, or do I just try and focus on one more than the other in case they get to live, but they could still both die, ultimately.
Yeah, and then I guess whether or not you've read Sunrise on the Reaping, you can understand the cruelty of the situation Haymitch has found himself in. Even if you disregard everything we now know from his like prequel. Like, he's spent 24 years in District 12. He's probably seen, no, he has seen these kids as babies. He will have been in that district when they were born. He has watched them grow up. Wouldn't you drink? Wouldn't you become a recluse?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like only go between your house and the hob? Because if that wasn't your course of action, if you did try to participate in district life, which is bloody hard, because as a victor, you inherently have more privileges over every single other person in your district. So that must be really hard to be able to stomach that you went through trauma and you've earned perks for it.
Yeah.
But then to actually participate and not live a reclusive life and a drunk life in this particular district, you wouldn't be able to walk into town without wondering which kid you were going to see in the games next, which kid's death you'll be partly responsible for because you were meant to mentor them. So like, what else do you do? There is not another choice, really. But then even Katniss reflects on this, which I think is like quite an astute moment for the girl. Like it's another one of her brain moments of let's logic out how this is going to fare if I pick this course of action. She says, but secretly I'm wondering if Haymitch sobered up long enough to help Peter and me because he thought we might just have the wits to survive. Maybe he wasn't always a drunk. Maybe in the beginning he tried to help the tributes, but then it got unbearable. It must be hell to mentor 2 kids and then watch them die year after year after year. I realize that if I get out of here, that will become my job, to mentor the girl from District 12. The idea is so repellent, I thrust it from my mind.
It really is another nod to the fact that not even the victors ever really win. And I know I keep saying this. I know I've said it a lot in this episode, but that's something we are really going to get into later. But there is no winning the games. No one ever actually wins.
And there's no one to share that responsibility with. There's no other fellow victor that he can commiserate with. Even Katniss says again that he has a disadvantage because most mentors have a partner, whereas Haymitch has be ready to go into action at any point for one of his tributes. She wonders how he's holding up with the drinking, the attention, the stress of trying to keep them alive. And this is not a situation where, even if it was like shared responsibility and you have someone who can understand because they're going through the exact same thing with the exact same kids and you're working with them side by side to mentor, there's not another victor with him who can share and understand that burden. Any other victor he comes into contact with is working as a mentor against his mentee's death. Like, the situation, the circumstances have pitted him against every single person who could even possibly understand what he is going through. And even on a good day, when you've got someone to share the joys with, or like the stress, have a drink over at the end, like there's no one to understand in his life. But even if you're having a rough day and something happens to your mentee in the arena and you've got to cope with that, there's no one else at your side to take that out on. Do you know what I mean? A bit of playful sparring, a little argument for the sake of stress relief. Even there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no like scapegoat. It can't be a case of, well, my mentee died because my other mentor who works in District 12 was too good at funneling District 12's sponsors to the other tribute and the team. It is all him. He has to live with every single decision, and it is his sole responsibility. He cannot pass that to anyone. Like, it's a shit coping strategy. It's the best he's got to be a complete drunkard. But I can't really think of a better one that isn't as damaging. If not more so.
Is he really an arsehole for numbing himself with alcohol after watching so much death? Especially in the end, if he does ultimately step up.
I think we all do it though, right? Well, me and you have obviously discussed previously we don't really drink all that much. Like for many reasons, variety of reasons. But
many reasons.
Many reasons. But that's the first thing a lot of people do after a hard day at work. Like, bringing this back into real life for a minute, you have a rough day at work, like say you're in an office job and a sale falls through and you lose the commission, or you work in the emergency services. It's the same thing. Like, a lot of people reach for a drink, but it's not just a rough day at the office for Haymitch. It is a constant, you live in this death and you are responsible for this death. I might be contradicting myself here a little, but I'm going to let you in on one of the little theories that I have been working on, because apparently I like to find theories in every single episode of this show. But I'm questioning like where Haymitch starts to care and all this stuff. And I guess if you know Sunrise on the Reaping, you might be more inclined to agree with my little fan theory over here. But let's go back to the actual reaping itself. Think about when Haymitch makes the biggest disgrace of himself he has ever made on live TV. He falls off the stage drunk, having like taunted the camera. And Katniss says she is disgusted by him. But what has happened previous to this? Prim has been reaped. Katniss has volunteered on her behalf. She's been brought up onto stage, and Effie, God bless her delusions, Effie is basically saying how nice it is that Katniss volunteered. I guess because Prim shouldn't have all the glory, is what she says. Can't be letting Prim have all the glory, can we? And
Effie's so tone deaf.
Katniss is grateful that Haymitch has distracted the camera. Katniss doesn't even get a moment to herself. She's stunned that she's volunteered. Like, she's been in this position. She has nothing else that she can do. And now she's just gone, okay, let's face the fact that this is certain death. Because we've established, like, the chances are girl gonna die. And immediately, it's kind of rubbed in her face by Effie to be like, can't let her have all the glory. There is no glory in being from District 12. There is no glory to be had. And then Haymitch taunts the camera and falls off stage all drunk. And it distracts everyone from Katniss. And Katniss is grateful for this.
Yeah.
Now, Haymitch has been a drunk for a while, and this is the worst thing he's ever done on camera.
I
He's
find that
alcoholic,
really
sure,
hard to believe. Yeah, I do also find that really hard to believe.
but now he's fallen off stage and passed out. Part of me does genuinely think, and like I say, you might be more inclined to go along with this little theory if you've read Summers and the Reaping. I think he did this purposely.
You think he did it on purpose? Interesting.
I do, because
okay.
I think for it not to have been on purpose, I think for it to have been pure coincidence, we'd need to accept Haymitch as being a complete drunkard, a complete addict, unable to control himself. And he proves to us that he can control himself. He proves to us that he can still drink, but drink within moderation enough to pull himself together to help Katniss and Peter. Now, if he was... I mean, Reaping Day is probably the hardest day for him. Don't get me wrong. It's also his birthday.
Yeah.
It's the hardest day for him, but coincidence, I'm skeptical. I'm a bit skeptical.
I hadn't even thought about it from that perspective. I just assumed, he's really, really drunk, and that's kind of how...
It's a rough day for him.
If not, everyone sees it, and I'm thinking, oh, it's his birthday, or thinking of when he was reaped, and obviously they literally have death on the reaping day, on his reaping, with the young lad getting shot and everything, and we'll go into that in the actual Summers on the Reaping book. But to then keep reliving that reaping day over and over and over again, I just thought he had got to the point where he had just absolutely bottled it. I thought he just completely bottled it. But to then think about it from the perspective of Haymitch didn't volunteer, but he also in some kind of twisted way also kind of did without realizing that he was. And yeah, he could see himself in Katniss, and maybe he too was trying to just get that attention away from someone he knew would be so stunned and even more scared.
Because Reaping Day is always his birthday, and every Reaping Day would bring back those same feelings. So why this day does he go too far, taunt the camera, fall off stage and pass out? Why this Reaping Day and not any other? Why has he not made this much of an idiot or a fool of himself previous to this day? And part of me wonders then whether Katniss and Peter going towards helping him, cleaning him up and carrying him to his room, realizing that they actually have some fight in him. They help him out first before he helps them, right? They drag him to his room, they clean him up, they do all this stuff. Part of me wonders whether Katniss did that because she's grateful for that attention being taken away from her in that moment where she's trying not to cry. She's trying not to break down on camera because she knows that'll be seen as weakness. And she's at the brink of tears and everyone just gets distracted. Is that why this chain gets set in motion of Haymitch helping them? Even would they have rolled over and accepted defeat? Because at the second they were reaped, Katniss almost accepted defeat. She knew she had signed her own death warrant, and then it was Prim that made her fight, and then they sort of bring Haymitch into helping along. It's just a little question in my mind that I think...
I'd be really interested to know what other people think as well, because I'd never actually thought about it from that perspective. I'd be interested to know what you, lovely listeners, if you are still with us as far as this episode, think if he did that on accident or if it was on purpose.
Yeah, this is Rachel's fan theory of the day.
I honestly don't know.
But then I guess getting away from my little theories and into more concrete evidence stuff. Actually, maybe not. Maybe we are going a bit too far. But Peter says something to Haymitch. Peter says something about Haymitch saying it'll take a lot to convince Katniss that Peter's feelings for Katniss are real. So Haymitch does know that Peter's feelings are real. Is he matchmaking when he sort of puts in that whole, I think I mentioned it slightly earlier, when he sort of drops in the whole fake dating thing to keep it up, guys, keep it up. Is he giving Peter that time with Katniss? Is that something he's actively trying to do?
I don't know. This might be one of your theories again.
Fan theories again.
Yeah, I think it obviously benefits Haymitch, the fake dating star-crossed lovers thing, but I don't think he is actually that bothered from a matchmaking perspective. I don't think he really thinks that I don't see him going that far. People might disagree with me, but that's just from, I guess, how I feel, and I feel Haymitch and how I think he would think. I just don't think he would think like that.
I guess it depends, like, how much you read into how he must feel based on the events of Sunrise and the Reaping. Like, does he see part of himself in Peter? In the whirlwind romance kind of idea, because obviously when he goes into Urena, he has someone.
Yeah.
And whether he wants to just give Peter just a little bit of that happiness, knowing that he's probably not going to come out. Another little man fan theories. But getting back on track into drunkard Haymitch, whether or not he is this kind, caring person, my little fan theories would like to hold on to, and whether I'm being a little bit delusional is fair game. But it does not actually matter to the Capitol what kind of mentor Haymitch is, as long as he isn't causing them trouble. They don't care about the tributes at all, really, do they? Let's face it. There are no consequences for Haymitch really not helping any of his tributes, or not seeming to help any of his tributes, because, well, what would the consequences be? They're literally sending kids in for their deaths anyway.
Yeah.
And as we'll get into next episode, they have favourites who they like to win. So does it really matter that these kids from District 12 are going to die because Haymitch is too drunk to help them?
Yeah, I feel like Haymitch kind of gets away with it because he is the mentor for District 12, and you don't typically get people betting on District 12 kids. They're usually the weakest, they're usually the smallest, they usually don't survive very long. So I really don't think they are that bothered about his behaviour. I think if people were actually betting on them, it would be different, but they aren't.
I guess this goes back to, as well, I think a lot of us can sort of like put the stress on Haymitch, and Haymitch probably puts the stress on Haymitch of, well, he's the reason that these kids aren't surviving, all these kids from District 12. He was their first victor since 10th games.
Yeah.
There have only ever been 2 winners in the entirety of District 12. So they're already at a disadvantage massively.
Yeah.
But then part of Haymitch's drinking has to come down to the fact that he is the mentor to these kids, and he is probably the reason in his mind that they are dead. And a lot of people are willing to say, well, would we have had a chance if Haymitch was a decent mentor? Well, you had mentors previous, and those mentors were from different districts. We've learned all this stuff since. It's not like the kids before Haymitch weren't mentored. They did have mentors. In fact, they probably had better mentors than anyone from District 12 could have been.
Yeah.
Really. Because there'd be less of that interpersonal relationship connection clouding the whole issue. But these kids are already predisposed to lose, like you said. And so asking whether Haymitch is the reason these kids are dying is actually like whether if we had a different mentor, would more kids win? Well, they didn't to begin with, did they? So
yeah,
and I think Haymitch is probably like being the hub about it now as well.
Yeah, because I was just like, when you were saying that, I was like, oh yeah, like before Haymitch won, they had, and again we're going kind of into Sunrise on the Reaping here, they had mentors from other districts, and Haymitch was still the first person that I remember anyway, to win on the 50th. So maybe it wouldn't have changed.
Years.
Yeah, maybe it wouldn't have changed that much. So I guess it does come down to it. Is he the arsehole for being drunk and not necessarily mentoring his tributes properly? No and yes.
Yeah, I think I might want to increase the sliding asshole scale. Because I think, like, in the end of a lot of these episodes, sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable. At the end of a lot of these episodes, we've been going into, like, are they the asshole? No, because they've been dealt a shit hand, and what else could you do? But at the same time, like, there are still some questionable choices. So I am going to propose we start on, like, a percentage or, like, 0 to 10 scale of assholeness. Just so that we get, like, an actual decent... Because otherwise, I feel like we're a bit of a cop-out. I'm not going to lie to you. I feel like we're just letting everyone get away with bloody murder over here.
Literally.
Literally. I guess the question really is like, is it ever fair to judge someone who has been trying to overcome something as heavy as this type of trauma? Like, but then we're judging them by their past actions as opposed to their present ones. He's trying now. Is that not enough? But what's the reason that he's trying? Does he care about these kids? Does he want to use them for rebellion? I kind of, this is the thing. I kind of want to put him on, I'm debating between like 40 to 60% asshole.
See, I was more a 35%, 40% asshole. Just because he's been through so much trauma. For me, that kind of like that really lowered it. You can kind of see what my how everyone thinks are. I'm like a 35, 40% asshole.
For right as we are right now, I might say 40%. I might agree with you there. But it's really going to come down to our next Haymitch discussion going forward. Whether my overall Haymitch asshole score increases because... Or lowers. I think where we're at right now, there's a lot of question marks around why not why he's doing what he's doing. We know why, but we're going to kind of know when each of those whys started.
Okay.
Like, so, I do think he does care. I do think he is part of like thinking rebellion. And I do think it is because he sees himself in these kids. But when did each of all those reasons become the driving factor? When did rebellion take over care? That's where my score might rise.
Yeah, we'll see how that score is affected by our later Haymitch episodes, when we get into like Catching Fire, Mockingjay, and then obviously Sunrise on the Reaping. But to close this out, I do have a question for you, Rachel.
Okay.
If you were to win the games, do you lean into the capital celebrity life or do you disappear into obscurity?
I personally like obscurity, but that's not always an option.
I don't like either of those options. Neither, but I would also like to live. So I feel like I have to win and I have to pick a choice. I would probably, obscurity. I just don't think I could stay in the capital and watch so many kids die.
How do you go through that much trauma and then celebrate the trauma and get glammed up every year and do the whole like commentator, mentor, let's go to all the parties and schmooze to get all these frivolous people to give us money? And it's something similar, I guess, to like when you go into the beginning of book 2 and you see like Katniss's reaction to parties. That'll be my reaction. Just complete and utter disgust at the luxury that all these people are living in that they take for granted when you go from nothing and they're literally like bringing you on to an arena to kill you. But then it would depend on which district you're from.
That's true.
Because obscurity might not be an option. If you're district 12 with only one mentor, it's not going to be an option.
Well,
on that delightful note,
I'm interested to know what our listeners think and what they would choose if they did happen to win the Hunger Games. And I know that next week we're going to be speaking about the careers and the career system and how that works for their districts and just how messed up they might be or not. We will discuss. And we thank you so much.
We need to worry about not.
Yeah, and thank you so much for listening for these episodes. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Have a good week, guys.
Bye. Thanks for listening to our podcast, and don't forget to let us know your thoughts on all of our potential assholes.
No matter what platform you're listening to us on, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, upvote and all that stuff.
If you like what we do and want to find out more, all of our platforms are listed in the description or show notes. We're a 2-person team, so any support or feedback is always greatly received.
Tune in next time to Once Upon a Red Flag.
Yeah.
And this is the 74th games and he won the 50th. So that's 23 games before this.
Times 2.
And he's mentored both That's
to
46 kids.
He's got to know and then had 46 kids die on him.